I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Daily Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network outside Gillette Stadium as the Patriots just wrapped up day 3 of day 4. It's day 4. I'm losing my mind. We're all losing our minds here. Off the off day, day 4 of 2024 training camp. It's Sunday football out here in FOXBORO. Quick reminder, we are powered by Game Time, so head over to Game Time. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Taylor, I don't usually do props. I'm not really a prop guy, but this is my 3rd bag of popcorn today because the Patriots had one-on-ones this afternoon, and it was absolutely outstanding, led by Javon Baker, who, number 6, the rookie 4th-round pick, was awesome. I think he was probably the winner of the day for everybody.
Yeah, I tried to find a wheelchair to stand up from. Could not find one in the facility, but yeah, Javon Baker
It was awesome.
Started living up to expectations, had a really impressive catch the other day in camp, and now he's building on that strong performance.
Yeah, he looked good. Jalen Polk looked good as well. He beat Jonathan Jones, I believe, on one of his first reps across the middle. He looked awesome. Keyshawn Boutte looked awesome as well. I think we really saw this this youth movement in the wide receiver room that's been kind of coming about. You know, we talk about Juju Smith-Schuster, KJ Osborne, even a guy like Tyquan Thornton, who is actually a veteran at this point now. Yeah. But it's the youth movement that makes it so promising. Obviously, the 2 rookies, Keyshawn Boutte, Demario Douglas is, you know, we talked about it earlier. He's been the most consistent guy in one-on-ones. He's been the most consistent Patriots wide receiver all along, but he's not really out here working through those, you know, 11-on-11 drills and stuff like that. But in one-on-ones, he's been awesome. Everybody's like. Point being, there's stuff to look forward to here.
Yeah, and we also got some insight into Demario Douglas's injury. Yeah. Now, he has been participating, like you said, early on during like warm-ups and some early drills, but when it comes to team, we haven't really seen him. He told us that it was, as we already knew, a hand injury, but he suffered the injury before training camp began. Said that he's okay, though, really, you know, said to us that it was more of a precaution that he's being held out. And as the best receiver in this receiving core, I think by a decent margin, at least at this point, it makes sense that they'd rather, you know, be cautious. Plus, it just gives some of these young guys more opportunities, like Jalen Polk, as we've mentioned in other shows. You said it. He had a good day, but Javon Baker, man. Ooh, y'all know I've been hyping up the Javon Baker hype train for quite some time, and I'm excited that some of that's starting to pay off because obviously he missed a lot of time this spring, but he's really starting to stack these days. And if this Patriots passing game is going to exceed expectations, it's going to be because at least 2 or 3 of these rookies end up stepping up, and we saw signs of that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they build.
Yeah, we heard from Baker. We heard from Demario Douglas after practice as well. Douglas, like you said, mentioned that his hand's holding him out a little bit, but he's going to be okay. And then Javon Baker basically talking about, you know, his expectations and what he wants to do, just get better every single day. And I think he's done that so far. He, you know, slowly but surely sort of has been – Jalen Polk has been right in there from day one with the ones. Javon Baker has slowly sort of worked his way in. I thought today he took the most reps with the ones he has so far, and he looked solid. So, again, I think that's sort of the main takeaway from today's practice. We'll get to quarterbacks in just a second, but again, like I mentioned, one-on-ones from the young receivers, it looks like from, you know, a Patriots team that's struggled in the wide receiver department for so long, it looks like we have some promise with those 2 young guys. So all's well there.
Yeah, finally. And as you mentioned, Demario Douglas was the most consistent receiver. Obviously, he hasn't really done a ton this summer. Right. In the spring, it was clearly him above everybody else. Baker, I just think, has been the most dominant. Like, we're talking a guy who's mossed defenders 3 different times, had some clear wins out here. He had one against Christian Gonzalez. That was kind of, you know, that's the one that always makes you kind of go, okay, something's a little bit different here. I will give Gonzo a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. He had outside leverage. It was an in-breaking route. He had good eyes. He was looking at Baker's hips, which is what you'd like to see. But still, Baker mentioned going up against a guy like Christian Gonzalez, he's a technician. So you got to play with him a little bit, but also you want to be a technician along with him. And I think the shake that he gave at Gonzalez was what actually gave him the separation. Then against Mikey Victor, one of the best plays of the entire summer so far, where he actually tracks a Jacoby Brissett deep ball over one shoulder for most of the route after he'd blown past Victor, but the ball was over his other shoulder. If you ever played baseball or been a receiver in football, you know it is very hard to go from one shoulder to the other when you're tracking a deep ball, but he was able to do it easily, hauled the pass in. Just like the ability to adjust to those deep passes, the hands, the ability to win, period, has stood out from any of the other receivers to me, again, outside of Demario Douglas, but the ability at the catch point and downfield has really stood out specifically for Baker. And then Jalen Polk, not as dominant of a day, but he did have that really good win against John Jones. He's been pretty consistent, but Baker at that X role, I think Jalen Reagor has been like the deep threat that we've seen day in and day out, but I think he's the one, Javon Baker once again, who in those one-on-one matchups can really dominate. So hopefully once the pads come on, he gets more opportunities to show
I
up.
like that you mentioned, Polk's been, super consistent. Baker's been the flashy one. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, we joke with the popcorn and we joke about the, standing up out of wheelchairs and stuff, but that's what he told us when he got here, is that's the type of receiver he is. He was asked today what his best attribute is. He said going up and high pointing the football and go and get it. He's done that so far. He looked really solid today. So despite, a slower day from the quarterbacks, which we'll get to, some bits of hope in that wide receiver room today for sure. Before we get into the other stuff, quick, housekeeping stuff, news items, things like that going on with attendance. Christian Barmore was not out here again. He was dealing with an illness on Friday, according to Mass Live's Mark Daniels, and he was still absent today. We didn't see him out here at all. Marte Mapu, a guy who was it a hand? I feel like that got mixed up with Douglas. Yeah, I don't think we know what's wrong with Marte Mapu, but he didn't show up for stretch. He ended up making his way out on the field later on with his helmet, but did not participate once again, so that's something to monitor. I wrote about that a little bit in my Sunday morning column. You can go check that out on clsmedia.com. Just as far as, Mapu's injury, the absence, and kind of what it will mean for the rest of the room and the safeties and whatnot. As far as other housekeeping stuff, Caleb Ford Dement, we talked about him on Friday. He wasn't out here. He has been cut by the team, and they signed defensive tackle. What was his name?
Josiah. Honestly, it was right when game was starting. I don't remember.
It was number 75. Yes. We thought it was Vince Wilfork. We didn't actually think it was Vince Wilfork. But everyone was confused. It was a new number 75. They signed a new defensive tackle today. So maybe that's a little bit noteworthy, just based on Godchaux's contract situation, Barmore not being out here. Not that anything's going to go wrong or not. Those guys aren't going to be out here or anything, but something to monitor, maybe a little bit of a backup plan at that position. So that's the housekeeping stuff.
One more actually.
Antonio Gibson,
Kendrick Bourne.
Let's talk about it. Antonio Gibson. Returns off NFI. Terrell Jennings returns off PUP. They end up actually coming out here stretching and participating. Kendrick Bourne comes out, no helmet, but a jersey, goes through stretch, looks really good. His knee looks okay, like as far as running around, jumping around, things that we haven't seen him running routes.
Yeah.
He obviously left the field after stretch. He did not participate, but some hope there from Kendrick Bourne because he comes out here and stretches at least.
Yeah, it was the first time that we'd seen him with his uniform on the actual practice field. Again, didn't do anything, really was just there for warm-ups. It was cool seeing him back out there because Kendrick Bourne brings a very unique energy. He loves to dance. He's always excited. Also, seeing him out there was really cool. And then, the running backs were back. We saw Antonio Gibson active. He had one play where I think he caught the ball in the flat or something and juked a couple guys. So he still looked good, and even when he was on the list, Gerard Mayo told us it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't going to last long. I don't know what it was. We still don't, but I don't think there's any ill effects from whatever he was dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. One other, quick note, housekeeping thing I'll add is just from special teams, they end up doing kick returns, punt returns, I believe. They ran a full punt drill, and the return men were Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Jalen Reagor,
I think Marcus Jones in the mix
Marcus
too.
Jones, and KJ Osborne was out there as well. Who wasn't out there was Juju Smith-Schuster and Javon Baker. So that's just another thing to note. I think Baker participated in those drills at some point during the spring, but he was on the side with Tyler Hughes, the wide receivers coach, and Juju Smith-Schuster as well. Something to keep an eye on as jobs kind of get lined up in that wide receiver room. That's housekeeping. Let's talk about the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Up and down day from the quarterbacks. I think Jacoby Brissett probably had I don't want to say his best day because it wasn't really anything spectacular. Today was just kind of meh across the board from both Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye. A lot more highs and a lot more lows for Drake Maye, I would say, though.
Yeah, with Drake, so during one-on-ones, I thought he actually did look good. He had a couple overthrows, but for the most part, you saw the arm talent, and even more than that, I thought his accuracy on those reps was a lot better than what it's been for the most part when he goes deep. He's had a couple really good ones, but I think for the most part, especially even on air, we've seen the ball placements a bit off downfield where he overthrows guys a decent amount. Sometimes, there was one to David Wallace today that ended up getting broken up where it was a little short, but honestly, one of those where I would put it more on the receiver, not making a play on the ball. So those were the exciting exciting reps where, again, you saw the glimmers of hope with Drake Maye and some of his young receivers, some of his deep threats. But then when we got to team drills, a lot more inconsistent. There were 2 straight pre-snap penalties during team drills at one point. One, I believe, Drake Maye had to get the huddle done one more time. The other was Layden Robinson for a false start.
Take a lap.
Yeah, it was the first lap I think we've actually seen during the entire offseason program. But beyond just the pre-snap penalty, the accuracy for me wasn't great for Drake Maye. I think for team drills, it was maybe his least impressive performance. We've seen there haven't been a ton of downfield opportunities for these offenses, and that doesn't worry me quite as much considering it is the Patriots defense they're going against. But for the most part, Drake Maye has gone through his progressions and then was able to put the ball on his receivers where they could get yards after the catch. Inconsistent on outbreakers, but for the most part, he's been fine. Today, I saw some wide misses that weren't catchable. There was a slant to, I believe it was Kayshon Boutte, where the ball was behind him. Just not the accuracy that we've seen from him in other days. So for Drake, between the pre-snap penalty where he had, or not a penalty, I'm sorry, but they had to rehuddle, and the inaccuracy, I would just say this was his least impressive day of training camp thus far.
Does it worry you at all that through 4 days we haven't seen like the practice from Drake Maye yet? Like as far as like he comes out here and shows why he was the number 3 overall pick. Because, again, this is something I kind of talked about a little bit this morning in my column where, like, I think Maye has shown an ability to understand what they're doing on offense really quickly. Like, there's not, again, we talked about the pre-snap mistake today, but there hasn't been that much of that today. He's come in as the number 2 quarterback and looked the part. And so I think that's a positive because, you know, there hasn't been like many rookie mistakes, but he also hasn't really come out here and shined either. So does that worry you at all? Do you think we should have seen that yet, or are you kind of holding back because we haven't seen them, you know, in full pads? They haven't really had like a, you know, full flow of an offense yet.
Not really, mostly because going back to Drake Maye's film during college, he's a very aggressive passer. Yeah. I think if there were more downfield opportunities, he would at least be trying them. But you also see in his college tape that he's a pretty good decision maker where if it's not there, he picks his spots pretty wisely and is okay going underneath if that's what the defense gives him. I think that's more what we're seeing. Okay. Like, I think that if there were more of those chances, he'd be taking them. But this is a very good defense once again. Jacoby Brissett said it himself, and he hasn't gone downfield very much. This isn't a defense that's going to give you that very often between the range, the disguises, and different looks they give, where sometimes pre-snap, they'll force you to go look in one direction, and then maybe there's an opportunity that you missed because what they did post-snap wasn't what you expected. So without the benefit of film, I don't want to make any, you know, drastic claims or anything like that, but I wouldn't say it scares me. For me, I would be more focused on the fact he hasn't been making really egregious mistakes. Yeah. Like, this was another day, yesterday or 2 days ago, I'm getting my days mixed up. Camp brain's starting to set in already, but you did see there was the interception to Matt Judon. Right. I said then, I thought that was more of a rookie mistake where it's like, yeah, don't do it again and I'm not going to hold it against you. And we haven't seen him put the ball into really bad windows. The accuracy needs to get better, but I think that's what we knew about Drake Maye heading into this, and he's still a long way from getting any real live reps against different defenses where you're game planning and all that. So, yeah, I wouldn't sound the alarm bells too soon. If anything, I think if you were hoping that Drake Maye would start today, maybe not, like wasn't a camp that went in your favor, but overall, I think he's shown enough that it's like, okay, this guy is making progress. He doesn't seem to be, you know, scaring you with the lapses. And if anything, if you want to put him out there, you know he's going to make mistakes. And I think the risk reward is kind of leaning more in Drake's favor.
I mean, I think we sometimes kind of forget that he's just a rookie and he's had 4 NFL training camp practices under his belt. Like, I asked the question just as sort of a devil's advocate to look at where he is in terms of where we want him to be, because again, rookies in the NFL come in, they start fast, but I also think too there hasn't been that much of a difference between him and Brissett, really. I think Brissett's overall been better, but it hasn't been drastic. We keep mentioning it, but we haven't seen glaring mistakes from Drake Maye yet. So overall, I think it's fine. It is tough to judge because of how good this defense is.
Yeah.
All right, let's do offensive line. Caden Wallace, Sidi So, David Andrews, Mike Onwenu, Chukwuma Okorafor. That's your left tackle, 2 right tackle. Friday to Sunday, the same offensive line, two practices in a row. Mm-hmm. Personally, I think that's telling heading into the first day in pads when we're really going to, you know, get a look at that offensive line, because that's when you can really tell, you know, how they're going to, you know, work through this zone blocking scheme and, you know, where guys are I guess how much better guys can work off each other from, you know, left tackle, right tackle, etc. And I think it's noteworthy, again, that we've seen rookie Caden Wallace at the left tackle spot 2 days in a row prior to the pads coming on. Okorafor, who has been called the left tackle of this team by, you know, his teammates and by Gerard Mayo and by Elliott Wolf before, he now moves over to the right tackle for 2 straight days. into that first pad of practice. So, Taylor, what do you make of that? Is it noteworthy? Am I looking too much into it? And what do you make of the offensive line overall as they continue these tryouts and shuffling into our first pad of practice?
I think it's definitely noteworthy because this is the first time the rotation's been consistent the entire summer. It's been 4 practices. But each day that we came in, there was a different combination. Chuks Okorafor mentioned, the coaches told us it's going to be different guys in there outside of David Andrews and Mike Onwenu every day. Also, still notable that Sidy Sow has not moved from his left guard spot. He's been another one of the few consistent pieces on the offensive line. The only consistent piece other than David Andrews. They're the only ones who have never actually moved. And the fact that Caden Wallace is still getting reps, I think that's huge. We want to see him. I mentioned it when we were seeing Vidarian Lowe and Calvin Anderson. I want Caden Wallace to get as many opportunities as possible to secure a starting job because he's someone that you at least expect to be a starter long term. I don't know if you think the same about Calvin Anderson or Vidarian Lowe. So as long as Caden's not out there making egregious mistakes, I think it makes the most sense to keep him out there. I don't love him being on the left side with Chuks on the right, to be honest. That's just because I think Chuks isn't as physical of a run blocker. I think the right side of that offensive line is going to be where you see a lot of the more physical gap, power, those kinds of run schemes, with most of the zone on the left. So Sidy Sow and Chuks I like. I think Caden is stronger and more physical, so I'd like to see him next to Mike Onwenu. But at the same time, if you want Caden Wallace to be your left tackle of the future, and he can hold up on the blind side, it also makes all the sense in the world to keep him there. So, I'm not too upset, but I do especially Chuks specifically, I like him better on the left.
That's what I was just going to say before you started mentioning it, where we both agree you would say that left tackle is more important than right tackle,
for sure.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okorafor, 1-year deal. Caden Wallace, 4-year rookie deal. If you can get Wallace getting going on the left side and he can be that, future franchise left tackle for Drake Maye on that blind side, I think you want to make that happen much quicker. I think you want to make that happen as opposed to Okorafor being there. You lose him after 1 year, then you got to find your left tackle again. Even if they do get a guy like Will Campbell from LSU in the first round of the draft, which is, again, we're looking way too far into it. It is free. We don't know what pick they're going to have, things like that. You can't bank on that, but I do think they're better off trying to get Caden Wallace at the left tackle spot instead of Okorafor.
100%.
All right, we are going to talk wide receivers. We're going to talk cornerbacks. We're going to wrap this thing up in a little while as well. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Game Time. We'll be right back.
Dog days of summer here in Boston, which means it's time to get to some games over at Fenway Park. This baseball season, I'm using Game Time to land my Red Sox tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's super easy. You just open the app, click Sports, and the games will be right there for you. Right now, you can get tickets to the Rollin' Red Sox for as low as $11. You can even buy parking for the game and check out your seat view right in the app. With Game Time, you can save up to 60% by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theaters, and more. Get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
That's Game Time. Head over to Game Time. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, quick one last note on the wide receivers I want to get your take on because we talked about guys in the special teams unit, punt returners, kick returners, things like that. One guy that, continues to, I just keep noting that he's always on the field out here is Jalen Reagor.
Yeah.
Number 83. He's there all the time. He's returning punts. He's the X-wide receiver. Basically the first X-wide receiver on the field with KJ Osborne as the Z on the right side. We're in 11 on 11s. He's always getting the first crack at the X position. I don't think he's really shined, though. There's been some solid plays. He's going to be one of their better kick returners, I would think, if he makes the team. But is he going to make the team? Because this room is so crowded and there's so many, moving pieces, moving parts. So I guess, long story short, what do you make of Jalen Reagor's role through 4 days, and where do you see it going from here?
Well, first, I think Jalen Reagor is going to make the team as a kick returner. I think he's their best option in that area of the game, and he's been consistent as well. I think he also makes it because he has been the most explosive veteran by far.
Yeah.
You haven't seen a lot downfield from KJ Osborne. You haven't seen much of that from Tyquan Thornton. There's been spurts, but not a whole lot. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, is playing himself off the roster. Yeah. I can't remember the last time he had a play. I don't think he's had a play where I was like, okay, Juju, Andrew, I see you. Like, he had a crossing route from Drake Maye on one of the first days, but he was pretty wide open. But in some of the contested targets where you'd expect a big-bodied veteran receiver to be able to make those catches and be able to box guys out, he hasn't. So because those are the group that you're working with, KJ Osborne's been solid, but mostly underneath, some intermediate. Jalen Reagor's been the only one who's really threatening defenses vertically. He's caught deep passes from, I think, Bailey Zappi, Drake Maye. May have had one today from Jacoby Brissett. I can't remember exactly who that was from. But in that way, I do think he stood out. Now, is he going to be a consistent X for you? No. I think Javon Baker is the best hope if this team wants a competitive outside receiver who can win one-on-one. But if you're talking about a backup, then it's like Kayshon Boutte and Jalen Reagor for me. And I think Reagor's just been the only consistent playmaker in any respect, so I understand why he's been the top X. So yeah, I think the reps and the way that that's been split is pretty indicative of how they see that room, because even Tyquan, we mentioned a couple days ago, he had a solid practice, but there haven't been many sessions or moments where Tyquan really stands out and you're like, all right, he's establishing that he deserves a roster spot. Maybe that changes when the pads come on. He said he's up to 192 after being 185 last season. Maybe that helps him out, but based on history, I'm not so sure that that's going to work in his favor.
The one thing I did find out from Eagles Twitter is that the way we think of Tyquan Thornton here, the non-padded practice camp hero, and then when the pads come on, he's non-existent.
Reagor?
Jalen Reagor was that in Philly for the last couple of years. Because our tweets, the CLNS account tweets, every time we would tweet a highlight from Reagor over the last 3 days, I kept seeing Philly fans being like, don't get used to it. He'll fall off at some point. So, again, Monday's padded practice is so crucial for so many different reasons. I think the wide receiver room is definitely one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what Reagor is. Like, he has the speed, and he's not, a terrible receiver, so he's going to make deep catches when they're available. He's going to get behind guys. It's the consistency. That's what keeps you on the field, and he's not shown that at any point in his career. As exciting as his highs have been, I'm not banking on those being, something we see all the time.
Right, I'm with you. We'll see how that all plays out. All right, let's do cornerbacks. We'll do a quick hitter on special teams, and then we'll close this thing out. Final thoughts, and we'll get out of here before we head out for day 4. What's this, 4? And then we'll go day 5 tomorrow. All right, cornerbacks. Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, Christian Gonzalez was the starting group at one point. But we also saw some Alex Austin there, and saw some Alex Austin at slot corner as well. Isaiah Bolden was playing some slot as well. I thought he had a couple nice pass breakups in there at one point. Gonzalez, and this goes back to the one-on-ones thing. I keep seeing tweets again on our highlights from one-on-ones that, Gonzo's getting smoked, Gonzo's this, he's going to be fine. One-on-ones, we talk about it. It's a wide receiver's dream because, A, the cornerback obviously has no idea where the wide receiver is going, but B, there's no help. There's not linebackers on the inside. There's not safeties over the top. You literally have to lock that guy up from the line of scrimmage all the way to the back of the end zone. So wide receivers more often than not are going to win those. I think Gonzo's going to be fine, but that's my spiel on him. Want to get your thoughts on Alex Austin, what you saw from him, because he was a guy who, when we went into this thing and we're asking about that third cornerback spot, that it was going to be Gonzo, John Jones, and then a mixture of Alex Austin, Marcus Jones, what have you. Marcus Jones has had the leg up to win that job so far, but I think Alex Austin showed a lot today and was one of the winners of the day.
Yeah, one, I do want to comment on Gonzo. I'm on the same page now. The one, really, if you want to say bad rep that he had was the one where Javon Baker beat him inside. But again, his leverage was against the route, so it's kind of tough for any defender to hang with those kinds of routes. But even when guys got to step on Gonzo downfield, and we saw it with Jalen Polk, I mentioned the rep that he had that was really impressive a couple days ago. Gonzalez is still right behind the receiver, able to make a play, so he's not getting smoked out here. Nothing to worry about. Alex Austin was very interesting today because he actually got those reps inside and looked good. He had a breakup against KJ Osborne. Osborne thought that there was some pass interference, so, you could debate that. But even still, Alex Austin showing that versatility. He was an outside corner, I'm pretty sure exclusively last season. I don't remember seeing him get a single rep in this slot before today. So being able to play inside and out, that'll be huge for Austin's ability to make this team and actually get playing time, especially because Marcus Jones still looks very good as the primary slot corner. Had himself a pass breakup against David Wallace where the ball was actually in Wallace's grasp, and Marcus Jones, he looked like John Jones out there. He kept ripping at it. I think Wallace might have thought he was out of bounds. Marcus Jones just keep going at it. Not only does he rip the ball out, he ripped off David Wallace's helmet. So that corner battle is still really fun. Again, when you have corners like that, and Alex Austin and Marcus Jones are getting reps with the first and second team, sometimes John Jones is out there as well with the second team, just as part of a rotation. It's not easy for this team to go downfield. I think it makes more sense a lot of the time for them to go short because at least you're keeping the offense on schedule versus constantly airing it out into bad windows.
the reason we we haven't seen, I talked about the practice from Drake Maye. The reason we haven't seen a ton of deep balls from Jacoby Brissett, a lot of deep shots, is because of how good the secondary is. There's so many moving parts, and we don't really I don't think we fully know yet who is going to be the quote-unquote starters and how they'll mix and match, but I think that's the beauty of the room, that they have so many good players that you can put out there inside, outside. You can mix and match. You can use different shells. You can kind of disguise, people and what coverage you're in and things like that. And I think that's going to obviously bode well for this team moving forward. So I'm not worried about the secondary. I don't think anybody should be worried about the secondary. You talk about Gonzo all you want, getting burnt in one-on-ones. Get out here, watch last season, see what you're going to have from him. He's going to be awesome. Any last thoughts on the defense before we wrap it up with special teams?
Not really. No, I guess one last thing on. Barmore not being out there yet.
But he's not out there.
I'll say Gonzalez, Kayshon Boutte, and Javon Baker were both asked about him, because it's pretty cool getting the perspective of the receivers when they're going against Gonzalez, especially two guys who won their matchups against him. And Kayshon Boutte mentioned he's so patient. That's one of the reasons that Gonzalez is so dominant, and why I think he's going to pretty much pick up where he left off last season, because on top of being a freak athlete, having everything you want physically, he doesn't panic ever, and you don't really see that from professional corners, much less guys who don't have a lot of experience and went up against the competition he did last season. So they both mentioned, you got to kind of give him a little something in the middle, because if you just run a plain route, it's not going to be enough. You got to get him off base a little bit. Javon Baker said the same thing, like you got to be a technician with him. So it was cool hearing the perspective of those guys with a corner who's just so talented and such an all-around threat.
Yep. All right. We talked about special teams earlier a little bit with the punt returners. We obviously saw our first live punt drill today. And those guys were, back there returning. But we also saw a live field goal drill at the end of practice. Notably, Joey Sly went first ahead of Chad Ryland. Don't know if we should read into it or not. We'll see what happens there, but I thought that was at least noteworthy. Both missed their first kicks from like 32 yards out. Both bad starts.
Shanks one direction than the
other. But then after that, they went 3 for 3 at the end of the day. So do we read into Joey Sly going first? Is that just a mix-up? Is that to try and get in Chad Ryland's head, kind of keep him on his toes? 2 bad misses. What do you make of that? And then they obviously followed up with 3 more.
Yeah, we've had so many of those, like the Chad Ryland bad misses, and also the competition that we've seen in other positions.
Right.
I'm not reading too much into the rotation at this point. If it happens 2 days in a row, then that's significant. But Chad Ryland actually had a better day the other day than Joey Sly. That's why I think it would be kind of weird if Joey Sly, moved back over him, considering that was how things went. So I'm not reading too much into it. If anything, I think as it stands right now, it's damn near neck and neck between those guys.
I'm with you. We'll keep an eye on that. Well, we'll keep you updated there, because obviously, even though Chad Ryland was a 4th-round pick last year, I think his job right now is completely up for grabs. If Joey Sly can, stay consistent and they can get into the preseason and kind of go neck and neck, I think that job is still wide open up in the air. So that's day 4. Up and down from the quarterbacks. Some get your popcorn ready moments from Javon Baker and the rest. What do you got?
One more thing. Speaking of the quarterbacks, quarterback 3.
Oh yeah,
remains a legitimate competition. We saw some pretty interesting way they split reps.
Yeah.
I believe the first time around it was Joe Milton in 7-on-7s, but he didn't participate in 11-on-11s. It was Bailey Zappi, and then they switched. So it was basically one guy getting the team drill reps each time and then them switching off. So thought that was pretty interesting. I've heard a lot of talk about Joe Milton being the best quarterback down here. I think that's pretty preposterous, first of all. Like, he's going up against completely different players.
Right.
It's like not the same quality of reps. And also, I don't want to like dump on Joe Milton, because he's been up and down. It's pretty much been what you expected. But he had a rough interception today. Joe Giles Harris seemed to kind of bait him into a pick to a throw to Javon Baker on a sit route over the middle. And, they still had their good moments, but I think it really is like both guys pretty much battling, because neither has really asserted themselves in terms of being like, yes, this guy's clearly, doing significantly more. Even Milton's completion to Javon Baker the other day, like that ball kind of did hang up there. It's cool to see, but Baker really made a play on a pass that Joe Milton got there, but not necessarily on time. So quarterback 3 still very much competition.
Yeah, I think for the first couple of days, it was kind of clear that Milton, I guess, was passing, or they wanted to try and have Milton pass Zappi. They gave him the reps. They gave him the opportunities. Now they're kind of back, closer, like you said, neck and neck. So we'll see what happens there. I would still say Milton still has the leg up, just in terms of draft capital, what you used on him, and where Zappi's at in his career versus where Milton is. But definitely notable to see them taking reps with each other at the quarterback 3 spot. Okay, that's day 4. Again, quarterbacks up and down, wide receivers shine, get your popcorn ready moments. Christian Barmore's not out here. Marte Mapu's not participating. Douglas is back, or not. I'm sorry. Douglas is not back. His hand is still keeping him out of 11 on 11s. So that's kind of the gist of day 4. Not much out here because I think they were slowly but surely getting ready for day 5 in full pads tomorrow. On Monday, we get to see what's going on with the offensive line. We get to see a lot more physicality. Gerard Maye even mentioned on Tuesday, or last Tuesday, that we might get a live tackling drill out here with the pads on. So taking us back to the Pop Warner days here. So one last thought quickly before we leave. What are you most looking forward to tomorrow when they put the pads on?
Trenches. I want to see the big boys get after it. I've been saying without the pads, there's only so much we can glean from the offensive line play. Now they get to lock horns and actually do their job, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's the offensive line. The offensive line is the most important position on this Patriots team right now. Of course, quarterback, of course, pass catcher to help the quarterbacks, but it all starts and ends with the offensive line, so we're going to have our eyes fully locked in onto that offensive line tomorrow. We'll have a trench report on CLNSmedia.com after practice, so make sure you check that out. We'll have a full notebook as well. And also make sure you check out all of our video content, our stand-ups and things like that on Patriots Press Pass. Those will be uploaded this afternoon as well. So that's going to do it for us here on the Patriots Daily Podcast from day 4 of Patriots training camp. So again, make sure you keep it here, locked in on Patriots Press Pass. Check out all of our written work at CLNSmedia.com. And take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace, y'all.